Hey guys, we're Adam and Steph, and we've spent a year converting the exterior of our Skoolie into the ultimate adventure rig. This summer is a whole new chapter of our build series, and probably the most exciting, our interior. In this episode, we're finishing our ceiling, which marks the first final product of the inside of our future home. Stay tuned to see exactly how we accomplish this beautiful slatted design, all while staying on a budget.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this week's episode, we're going to be doing our ceiling. We're going to be doing a slatted ceiling, and we're pulling inspiration from the van building world. Haven't seen it too much in a Skoolie. So we're using some particle board to cover up all of the spray insulation, and then we're going to be using strips of cedar, and we're going to have a little bit of a gap and create a depth effect. Now the reason that we're using this particle board is because it's thin, and our cedar strips are also going to be pretty thin as well. And we're doing it this way because we don't have a lot of headroom in our bus. Even though Stephanie shaved my head yesterday, I still don't have that much headroom to spare. So we got to keep the roof as low profile as possible. We have to cut these up to shape, and we're also going to be installing our lights. So we need to use a hole saw and drill some holes into these so we can get our wiring through, so we can install our lights. We're going to do all that right now. So in our search for lights for our bus, we went through quite a few options. I like these puck lights. We played with the idea between this kind of puck light and this more of a dome-shaped one. I like the black ring on it. This would have flowed really well with the design of the roof. But when it came in the mail, you could see how tiny these things are. But these have a nicer color temperature. So these are 4,000 Kelvin and these are 5,000. I find 5,000 a little too white, like it's almost like bluish inside. So this is a nice, like a warmer color. So we're gonna use these on the center. We're gonna have like 2 rows of them going down the center of the bus. And I just felt like these weren't gonna throw enough light, but these will, these should be good. So these 2 lights are set up to be connected to the driving system because this will be good for, say we're driving, we need to look at a map or something. We have this switch, and we can control the lights up here completely independently from the house system. So that's what these 2 lights will be for.
So for our slatted ceiling design, we actually went ahead and bought tongue and groove cedar planks because it was the cheapest option that we could find at the hardware store. We're looking at some trim options and some just regular lumber options that we could maybe cut down to be our slats. But because we want our slats to take up the least amount of headroom, we wanted to go with something that's very thin, and this is what we found. These boards are 5/16 in thickness, which is very thin, but it will still give us the look that we're going for. But the main reason we went with these is because it was very cost effective. To do the whole ceiling with lumber or trim pieces would have added up very quickly. The only problem now with these tongue and groove planks is that they have the tongue and groove, and we want the slatted ceiling design. So that means we have to cut off the tongue side and the groove side. So the way I'm going to do that is with our table router. We tried it with the table saw, but if you watched our last video with our cabinetry, we do not have a good time with the table saw. So I'm going to use it in a little bit of a different way to cut off the tongue and grooves of our planks. I've just got a 3/4 inch bit here. It doesn't really matter what size, just as long as it's big enough for the part that you're cutting off. And I've set the depth taller than the thickness of my board so that it will cut all the material off. The only problem when you're using a router table when you're cutting off material is your fence is going to be different at your in point and your out point. So I have a 1/4 inch piece of plywood here clamped to my out point because I'm cutting a 1/4 inch off of my boards on either side. My game plan is to do one side of all of the boards first and then reset my fence to be the final thickness of all the boards that I want, so that I can, on the second go around, run the already cut edge on my fence so that I don't have to do this clampy thing. That way I can make sure that all of my boards are the same thickness as well. So let's get started with the first side cuts. All right, so we've cut all of our boards just on the one side where all the grooves are, and now we're gonna cut all the tongue sides. I want our boards to be exactly 3 inches wide, but I couldn't set my fence that far. So I've clamped a piece of plywood here to act as my fence, but now I don't have my guard. So this is gonna get a little dangerous, and it's definitely gonna look a little dangerous. So I definitely don't advise you do this, but if you do it, you didn't see it from us. I've also got another piece of plywood clamped on the other side so that there's no chance of kickback. I'm feeding all of our boards in the opposite way just because the router is cutting on the opposite side than we did before. But let's get right to it and you'll see what I mean. All right, after a lot of headache and a few days passing, we finally have all of our backer boards up on the ceiling. Halfway through putting this stuff up, we weren't sure if it was gonna work out and we were stressing out about that. But I think now that it's all up and we can see it in full, it's going to work just fine. We've already cut out all the holes for our lights, and we've puttied up just with drywall putty all of the screw marks, and I think I'm going to use some caulking or something to fill in some of the gaps just so it stays a little bit flexible. It doesn't need to be perfect because you're not going to be able to see very much of it in between the gaps once we put all of our cedar boards up, but we do want to have a really nice base. So what's left for today, all I have to do is sand the rest of all the putty, give it a good wipe, then prime and paint it. So that's on the schedule for today. Let's go.
Staring at the ceiling, so vivid and clear. I don't need a crowd, I got your company. It's something that you do to me, you take me over. I'm stuck on your view and your clarity. I've been waiting a long time for you to
here we are. Our paneling is up. It is painted black. We have our holes for our lights and our wiring's prepped, and our fan hole is cut out and fan is installed. We are ready to put on our cedar strips. Now, before we do that, we just kind of wanted to go over the trials and tribulations we went through to get to this point. This material is 1/8 inch thick. It's like a particle board, and it's very flimsy, which is good because it can flex around the curvature on the side of our bus, but it's also very flimsy, which is causing it to, in some spots, kind of buckle a little bit. With hindsight in mind, and if you're doing this, trying to copy this design yourself, make sure you have strapping that follows roughly where the bottom of these sheets are gonna be, the middle, and the top, so that it can flatten out the pieces so that you don't have these kind of like sagging spots. And especially if you look down at the bottom here, you can see it really bows in because it wants to stay flat. A second problem we had, the way we did our strapping is there's the hat channel, and we put pieces of plywood, little strips, onto the hat channel. We overhang the strapping by maybe 1 inch on each side, and that gave us such a small space for us to be able to put a screw. So we have to miss the metal but hit the strapping, and that's a very small area. So we had to take a lot of time in marking out exactly where the strapping is and exactly where we can actually put a screw. In our first attempt on the first piece in the front, we didn't do that, and we were just missing and making a bunch of holes and ruining the plywood, and we ended up, this is the piece, like it just breaks right through because it's so thin, it just comes apart like cardboard when you miss. So that's another thing we would do differently, is probably just strap it in a different way. Probably put 2x2s on the sides of the beams, and then we have a big thick piece of material that we can attach things to. We're making this work. It's just taking an extra amount of time. Now we're gonna take our cedar boards and we're gonna mount them up and finish up the ceiling.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're using these 1/2 inch pieces of plywood as our spacer.
Catching a ride home. So my heater's broke, but it's better than walking. Write your number down, I'll call. Second glance gave me away, and now I'm trying to fake it. I'm not ready, but we've already started. I'm not ready, but we're already falling. Hey, listen close, can you tell what we're ready for? Ready whispering, don't you go? Can you tell that we're ready for me and more? Staying out too long, spin the record again, turn it up a bit louder. Tell me, don't you dare be late. I know better, but I'll take my chances. And I can't help it, but you're making me sweat. I won't forget that we are already gone. I'm not ready, but we've already started. I'm not ready, but we're already falling. I'm not ready, but we've already started. I'm not ready, but we're already falling. Hey, listen close, can you tell what we're ready for? Ready whispering, don't you go? Can you tell what we're ready for? Me and more. Hey, listen close, can you tell what we're ready for? Ready whispering, don't you go?
All right, that's it for this week's video.
We didn't finish the slatting because we're going to do the upper cabinets and everything that attaches to the roof first, and then we're going to tie it all together. So the rear lights that are right at the middle, those are our bedroom lights. Those are controlled separately. All of the lights in the main area are on a 3-way switch, except for the front two. Those are going to be connected to the bus's electrical system, and it's completely independent, so that when we're driving, we can control those two lights and see what we're doing up in front.
We tested out the lights the other night when it was dark, and it looks great. The color temperature and everything of these lights is perfect, and it's not too bright. We didn't put too many lights, so
Yeah.
it looks really good.
I'm happy with the look.
Yeah. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.